Welcome to another episode of Make Growth Happen, your podcast to learn all about how to drive sustainable growth for the small and medium business space. Today, we have Connor Gross, a franchise business consultant, joining us today to talk all about the state of franchising and home service franchising in particular here in 2025. Really excited to have Connor on. We've got a great discussion plan to dig into all of the trends that we are seeing here in this space. Connor, welcome to the show. Just want to pass it over to you for a quick intro.
Thanks, Garth. And quick and skinny on me. I've been in franchising since 2019. Well, a little earlier than that, I was working for an ownership group in a fitness franchise concept. And those owners wanted to diversify into the home service space from fitness, and this was pre-COVID, so ended up being really good intuition on their part. But they knew what a lot of people find out, which is that home services can be a really challenging business to operate, and they just didn't have the bandwidth to operate it. And so I had the opportunity to co-invest alongside of them and become their operating partner in that venture. So that was started in 2019. I actually still own that business today. I haven't been super involved for the last several years, but in 2022, I ran a search fund before I really knew what a search fund was, but I bought an existing franchise location in a brand called Smash My Trash, and have bought a few more since then. But a little over a year ago, in addition to owning my own franchises, just got a lot of inbound interest from people that were wanted my help to get into franchising and do a little bit of what I was already doing, and so became a franchise consultant as well. And so that's the other piece of what I do, is just helping people who know they want to own a business but just don't know where to start in terms of sourcing, evaluating, and funding those opportunities. So that is me.
Perfect. Thanks for that intro. You mentioned a whole bunch of things there, like searching, buying franchises, consulting with other people buying them. Just so everyone knows, search is sort of a growing theme. Often it's also called entrepreneurship through acquisition. We just did 2 podcasts on some sales and marketing due diligence on that topic, and I also teach it at the local MBA program. So it's definitely something that's been gaining a lot of momentum, and searchers have been definitely interested in the home services space. But Connor, one of the things you and I have been talking about over the past couple of weeks is how that home service model has been changing a little bit. And specifically, one of the trends that you've been seeing is this difference in how businesses are valued or looked at that have recurring revenue and those that are more project or one-time based. And really what it comes down to is the CAC to LTV ratios on this. So tell me a little bit more about what you've been seeing.
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't have data around valuations and how that's, transitioned. I know that, obviously recurring revenue is still going to be viewed favorably from a valuation standpoint. But just what I've noticed as I'm working with people that are mainly looking at starting new franchises, there was a period of time where recurring revenue businesses were indisputably dominant. You're thinking about things like mosquito control, landscaping, house cleaning, things like that are low ticket recurring revenue businesses. And just basically the trend that I've noticed over the last few years is that just across the board, everybody's ROAS has gone down, their return on ad spend. And when that happens, the disadvantage of these lower ticket recurring revenue businesses is by design, it takes them longer to recoup their ad spend. And so as they get squeezed, that becomes a more and more challenging business model to grow, because this isn't like a software business where you're designed to take the hit right off the bat and recoup your ad spend over a long period of time. We don't have the advantage in home services to go raise cheap capital at a multiple of revenue. What I've seen just in some of the interests in recurring revenue business has been transitioned into these non-recurring revenue businesses that again, it's a project-based model, more challenging to project revenue, but it's a lot more capital efficient because they're able to recoup their marketing spend more quickly.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to sort of the search Bible, it's the HBR book, like How to Buy a Small Business by Rick and Royce, the 2 professors at Harvard Business School. And, I still remember the page, and I think it's like the 5 things to look for in your business when you're searching. And on that list is recurring revenue, durable businesses that are going to continue to be profitable. So I think that's one of the things that, really initially guides people looking for businesses to buy in that recurring revenue direction. And I think one of the things that we've seen across our clients is that the way these services are priced and packaged is really important. So in some of those recurring revenue business models and some of the ones you've mentioned, I have seen larger upfront fees passed on to the customer so that they can recoup those costs. And as more businesses and more business models have entered that marketplace, those have sort of become really, really difficult to maintain. So basically, to really put brass tacks, that it's a business that's charging a really high upfront first service fee, and they're delivering a great service with that, but it essentially prevents a lot of customers from jumping in and starting the recurring business. And it's exactly the opposite of the SaaS businesses that discount that first service to get you in the door and then get the recurring revenue. They're putting this big price tag up front so they recoup the acquisition costs and then sort of make all the money on the tail end there too. And I'm seeing the conversion rates decline in those types of businesses. And so certainly. Now, I think on the flip side, we also have some clients that really don't have a recurring model. They are project based, and they're always asking us, hey, how do we make this more recurring? How do I add a monthly fee into this? How do I keep getting value from the customers that I've acquired? So I do see both sides of that coin too.
The grass is always greener.
The grass is always greener. Exactly. Exactly. I think one of the things that ties into, and feel free to add other comments on that if you like, but the marketing landscape for home service franchises. We have a lot of clients that say, hey, it's really tough to get leads today. And for example, I have one client who was telling me how in early 2023, her cost per lead was $7. By the end of 2023, I think she said it was around $20. And just last month, she said it went up to $60+. And so I think some of these home services businesses are starting to see big shifts in the way their digital ad spend is working. Have you noticed anything in that area too? Because it really ties into the same idea of the recurring versus the project based.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed it. And you're certainly more well versed on like the marketing specific side of things than I am. But what I'm noticing from like the franchise standpoint is that has become the new differentiator in franchise brands. It used to be all about the consumer facing, what is our differentiator of the product or service that we're selling, and today it's all internal. This is our differentiation and how we're helping franchisees to drive revenue. Because I think what happened is there was this bull run for a while where, like you said, the leads were cheap. Some of these industries weren't quite as saturated as they are today. And so there were probably franchisors that weren't necessarily adding a ton of ongoing value, but they were able to get away with that because their franchisees were still super profitable. And just again, as the marketing landscape has gotten more and more competitive, there's a squeeze factor that caused them into scrutiny. And so again, it's like the differentiation is more about this is what we're doing to help franchisees to drive revenue, or this is just how our business model is uniquely positioned to drive revenue and not be as reliant on paid ad sources that previously a lot of business models were very reliant on.
Absolutely. So some of our most successful clients are the ones that have really built a business over a decade plus and have a lot of lead sources that are not from digital sources. Those are so resilient because anytime Google updates an algorithm, we see these big waves happening across a bunch of our clients that are really dependent on digital lead sources. And clients like that are, they see those dips, but it's muted because so much more of their business comes from non-digital lead sources. Now, so like in trying to dig in, like what are some franchisors doing that is really helpful or differentiating their brands?
Yeah. And just on that, one thing that I encourage people to do that I'm working with to get into franchises is really two things. It's like if you conduct diligence under the assumption that you're going to be almost 100% dependent on paid advertising. So when you're running your numbers and you're understanding, hey, what are people having to pay for leads? What's their cost to acquire a customer? What kind of gross profit are they seeing? Assume that you're going to be 100% dependent, and then execute like you're going to be 0% dependent, and like you're not going to get anything there. So if you challenge yourself to say I'm going to have nothing coming from this well, what can I do to go pound the pavement and drive leads? Somewhere in the middle, that's how you position yourself for success. But just as an example, I think that of what franchisors are doing, I think that part of what you're seeing now is a shift of some of the B2C focused in home service or just property service in general. general. Some of that's being shifted to B2B because people have realized that, B2B, while the sales process is a lot more high touch, longer sales cycle, et cetera. Ticket is higher. And so, you're seeing some success of franchise brands that really aren't doing a whole lot of differentiated things from a service standpoint. But their revenue engine is just so much more oriented around B2B sales than some of their competitors, and their franchisees are seeing pretty strong results as a consequence of that.
That's definitely a hot topic. I haven't seen it trickle all the way down to some of our clients yet, but I think that's definitely a really good and interesting area too.
Well, and I would just say for anybody that's looking at franchises, like it's important to talk with the franchisees, and because it's one thing for the CEO to tweet about B2B sales and how much they're doing, and then it's you may find out something different on the ground there. So people just have to talk with franchisees and figure out how that is playing out.
I think that's a super important part of the process. One of the things we mentioned in one of our recent podcasts was to get a bunch of the sales calls and listen to the sales calls if you could. And I know not everyone's able to get those recordings or share those externally if you're in a due diligence process, but I think that's a really fun way for searchers like what we've been talking about to get a really good perspective of what that sales motion is like and how are they going to be able to deliver on that as they transition into an owner operator type role. The third topic we wanted to touch on, Connor, is that, over the past couple of years, everyone has been seeing home services up and to the right, this sort of unlimited growth path. I think that there's further evidence supporting that because we've seen large private equity firms get behind some of the major franchise brands, as well as even private equity firms, buying up franchise territories as well. So clearly there's a lot of interest and investment in this segment. And over the past several years, leads have been, relatively cheap and businesses have been growing. What are you seeing as trends in that area? Is that going to continue, or are you seeing maybe some headwinds?
Yeah, I'm going to come back to the private equity piece because I'm just preparing a 40-minute presentation on that exact topic for a Holdco conference in a few weeks. So, but like first of all, to your first question, like recent trends, we're looking at the last 5 years in franchising in general. 2020, 2021, that was a stretch where really two things were happening. You had a bunch of cheap money. The economy was on the sugar high for most of that run. And a lot of people were transitioning careers as a result of COVID. People had, remote work and stuff. And the other thing that I think was a piece of that is that a lot of people were working remotely and got the idea, like we need something new. I got a puppy during COVID. Some people were like, I should buy a franchise because I'm working remotely. And, if I'm working remotely, that means that I can run a business on the side. And that was true for some people, but for a lot of people, it hasn't worked out quite as well because these are hard businesses, right? So anyway, there's been a little bit of a tapering off of the number of people that have gotten into franchises, but I view that as a little bit more of a normalizing, off of what was just an abnormal period rather than any kind of, negative overall reflection on the market in general.
Yeah, I think we're seeing something similar across our clients and the types of franchisees we're talking to and working with, but certainly a slowing. Leads are getting a little bit more expensive, so that has tapered some of this sort of like high growth. And I think that's really just a couple factors, but I don't think it's a sort of doomsday for home services franchise. I think we're just hitting a little bit of a tougher period. Some of the business models are going to have to evolve that maybe we're riding high and we're able to be a little bit looser during the past 5 years. But I think as sort of people re-engineer those processes, I think it will still be a very strong period of time for home services.
Yeah. Cool. Can I jump up on my soapbox about private equity real quick?
Oh yeah, I'm excited for this. I haven't heard this.
Well, it's one of the most exciting things that's happening in franchising because basically what you're able to see is how trends in different franchise industries like QSR and fitness, you're able to see how they just transcend and they just flow down until they get to the services. And what I mean by that is like for decades, there's been a lot of institutional involvement in QSR, quick service restaurant brands. And that's why, they're publicly traded franchisees of some of these big box brands because they've gotten so massive and there's been so much consolidation. Mm-hmm. And then you've seen that matriculate into fitness and beauty. A lot of private equity involvement on the franchisee side of those brands that's accelerated consolidation there.
Yep.
And so you're seeing this same playbook now come into home services as well and commercial services, just any mobile service franchise, guy in a truck type of thing. You're seeing more and more institutional involvement there as well. And again, it's the same playbook. They go and they pick, the strongest operators in strong franchise systems and give them their checkbook and give them, tools and resources and say, go get them, Tiger. And that's how they go around and they consolidate the system. And, when it's executed the right way, obviously the value creation potential on the buy side is really strong, but it's also really strong on the sell side because franchisees that never would have had the ability to sell to private equity because they don't have the scale, they now have the ability to sell to a private equity backed operator because they have the infrastructure and they have more dry powder to work with. So it's really, really exciting, and I'm just very passionate about promoting that concept and ultimately just getting more capital, more institutional capital into the hands of the strongest franchise entrepreneurs in the country.
Oh, this is great. I have two follow-up questions for you on this. The first is, is it too late for people to get involved in that, or is it still happening? You said it's trickling down into home services from these like QSR and retail. So, are folks too late to jump on that bandwagon, or is the timing still right?
No, it's not too late. The strategy is different now. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people that are interested in, the overlap between entrepreneurship through acquisition and franchising, a lot of them have in their mind that, I want to get into a legacy brand, a brand that's been around for a long time and, go and roll those up. And that's where like a lot of that opportunity has been seized. And if you get in now, you're kind of behind the eight ball. So really just how the strategies change is you have to focus more on the trajectory of the franchise concept itself rather than like how many units do they already have. And so for people that want to execute this strategy, they basically have to look for something that might be a little bit newer, might be a little bit more in its nascency, but has a very strong growth trajectory. And that's how they, I call it planting your flag. Like that's how you get in, you plant your flag there. And, as the trajectory continues, you've set yourself up to be the preferred, acquirer and go raise institutional capital if you would like to.
Perfect. That's exciting. That I didn't realize that before. So I really like hearing that. The second follow-up question is, I've read a lot of FDDs, and some
I'm
of the
sorry.
FDD. Me too. But one of the things I've seen in a bunch of them is that there actually can be limitations on how many territories a single owner can buy. So how does that work with this private equity strategy? Are those in conflict, or do they start working together? At what point does that switch?
Yeah, they're in conflict, and I have this analogy that I use about like evaluating franchises for empire builders, for people that want to really scale. And the first thing they have to look at is unit economics, and the second thing they have to look at is the concept I just walked through of what does the growth trajectory look like. The third piece there is the leadership of the brand, and are they aligned with having these empire builder mentality franchisees coming in. Because that's important to your point. And so, no, a franchisor that's going to restrict you and say, there are some franchisors that I think that nobody should ever entertain that say, we want you to own and operate this single unit forever. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's indentured servitude and it should be illegal. But, even if they're saying that you're only going to be able to own 2 units or 3 units or whatever, like that's still not enough scale for institutional involvement. And so that's where like it's important, self-serving answer here. It's important for people that are, getting into these things to talk with a franchise consultant that knows what they're talking about, because it's important that you begin with the end in mind. And if that's your strategy is to scale, it really doesn't matter how juicy the opportunity is. If those things aren't in place and you haven't planned for that, that's a problem.
Makes sense. That's good. So the last topic so that we wanted to touch on is really about how has search impacted franchising, and I think you've seen this in real time unfold over the last really 5 years as search has gotten much bigger. There are more people searching. What have you noticed? How has this changed your role as a franchise consultant, and how have you seen some of the brokers changing their behaviors?
Well, I think that search has gotten just a lot more popular, and there's a part of that that's a very good thing because I'm a fan of the model. It's been a great model. It's been a great path for me. It's been a great path for you. So that's a good thing. But as trends get more popular and it gets wider, A lot of times, what you can find is frankly just the quality of the people coming in, not their humanity, but their qualifications starts to can slip, and I think that that's part of what's happened right now. I think that part of the education ecosystem around search is very, very unhelpful and unproductive. Meaning, like there are literally people out there that are saying the way to get better at your business buying skills and set yourself up for success is to go sign as many NDAs as you can and look at as many SIMs as you can. And that's like, to me, that's like saying that you're going to get better at buying real estate by going and looking at houses. I mean, like, does that make any sense at all? No. All you're doing is irritating brokers and muddying the waters that makes the whole system work, less well. I think that there's another widespread and pervasive narrative that I find concerning, which is people positioning ETA as like this is easier than starting a business. And I think that that has two, really negative ramifications, which is, first of all, people's expectations are off the mark. They think that this is an easy button. It is not easy. It's not easy to buy a business, and it's not easy to run it after you buy it. And then the other thing is I think that there's just a lack of respect for entrepreneurs and business owners in this space. I think that sometimes people think about, this person that has spent 30 years building this business, they're somehow inferior than I am because, I've read HBR's, book about ETA, and, I'm going to go and take over their business and implement a new CRM and outsource their admin and create value in that way. And this stupid idiot, he was the one that didn't know what he was doing. So all of these are concerning trends that I'm just seeing across the board, and I'll end my rant there. But
I have the utmost respect for some of the business owners that their knowledge level is so high of their business that they don't need a CRM. Like that's one of the other differences. Looks like you had something to say on that.
Look, I got so excited when I walked into the office at the first business that I bought, and it had a fax machine and a phone on the wall with a cord on it. I've never operated one of those things in my life, just FYI. So guess what I did on the first day? You got rid of the fax machine and got a digital phone system, and I was waiting for this like eureka moment, like boom, you have created value. Congratulations. It's like, no. Like, it's just like that was one thing, and then you still had to go run the business and grow it and all of this stuff. But if you listen to some of the influencers in this space, they would lead you to believe that like that was a fundamental thing that completely changed the business, and it just wasn't.
Yep. I think there is a lot more to it. I think it's a shortcut. I'm trying to be careful with my word choice here because I don't want to mislead people along what you just sort of pointed out. It's a shortcut to finding product market fit. It's not a shortcut to doing the work to grow and scale your business. Growing and scaling any business is incredibly hard work. Product market fit is also incredibly hard work. So I think it helps you accelerate the product market fit, which is also part of the value proposition of franchising. Like when you step into a franchise, you have product market fit as well. So I think that's actually maybe a really interesting thing for searchers to be thinking about. Like in my search, I did not look at franchises probably as much as I would have now, knowing what I know about the franchise system.
Yeah. And to quickly run through kind of how franchising and ETA kind of intersect, if you will.
Yeah.
It's one of the challenges that people that are searchers that are interested in franchising run into is that you have this inverse correlation a lot of times between the quality of the franchise concept itself and the number of like strong resale opportunities there are available to like the quote unquote outside world. Because in a really strong system, a lot of those are getting gobbled up internally by the existing franchisees for a number of reasons. And that's one of the main advantages of, growing through acquisition when you're in the system is because the wind is at your back, but it's very challenging when you're outside. And so really the smart strategy for a lot of people who want to grow through acquisition is to use it as a growth strategy, but to get in the door and plant your flag first. Because, otherwise the trap that I see searchers falling into right now in franchising is frankly ending up in kind of crappy franchise concepts because by default, that's where they happen to find a deal.
But you just did say like, hey, you got to get in the door and plant your flag. So you're just saying be very intentional about the brand that you do plant that flag in so that once you get in the door, then you can sort of make the add-on acquisitions.
That's exactly right. It's just you got to consider the franchise brand really as the first priority, and then the deal. You can't just take a deal. If you find a really good deal in a franchise concept that doesn't have any energy behind it and isn't all that well positioned to grow, it's like you don't get a pass on the fact that it's a franchise just because it's an acquisition or it's an existing location. You still are going to be wherever you land.
Perfect. I feel like we need to do a follow-up episode on just that topic. Like, what would be your due diligence steps? Because I feel like that there's so much content in that you and I would love to talk about on the sales, the marketing, the product market fit, the types of brand, the growth trajectory, the FDD component. So I think maybe we should put a pin in that and come back to that for another one.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, anything else you want to wrap this up with, Connor? It's been great having you on the show.
No, I would just say if I can, be helpful to anybody who is looking at franchising, just feel free to reach out to myself and my team. Reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever's helpful. And this was fun.
Yeah, we'll get a link to your contact info in the show notes and make sure everyone has access to that. So thanks so much for joining us, Connor, and great having you on. We'll have to have you back soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Garth.
Thanks.